Hi, my people. For a moment, I was about to feel like, oh my god, I'm about to abandon my people, and that cannot happen. That cannot happen at all. So, yeah, today, this video, you're getting it a little bit late because I had to do other things. Like, by now, most times, I've already posted my reading video and an update. So, today, you're getting the update a little bit late, but at the end of the day I have to show up. So yeah, let's get into business. Is it let's get into business or let's get on business? I don't know, but let's get into business. So we are in chapter 5, and if you've been following this series and us reading this book by Tracy Kelly, and the book is called Murder at Longbourn, you know that every chapter starts with a quote, and the quote of this chapter, chapter, the quote of this chapter, which is chapter 5, eh, we're in chapter 5. The quote states as, there are different kinds of wrong. The people sinned against are not always the best. There are different kind of wrong. The people sinned against are not always the best. And this quote is by Ivy Compton Barnett. Yeah. Yo, I hope I've pronounced the name right. But anyway, let's continue. I swear to God, Tom, if I find out that you are having an affair with Susie, I will kill you. And with these words shouted in the foyer by Karen, the show began. We watched open mouth as Karen stormed into the room and pulled up short, as if she was surprised to find us standing there. She wore a long gown of grey silk taffeta, so volum- voluminous and voluminous that there could have been at least 3 prop guns hidden in its folds. A second later, Tom's large frame filled the doorway. His broad face appeared flushed and angry. A thin sheen of perspiration covered his face and head. Good evening, he said to all of us. My name is Tom, and this is my wife Karen. Hello, everyone. She greeted us with an overbright smile. I'm not sure how long we all stared at the two of them before I blatantly remembered that this was not a movie we were watching. We were supposed to interact with the actors as if they were actual guests. I returned their smiles and walked over with the tray of hot divorce. Good evening, I said. Would you care for something to eat? No, but I'll take a drink if you've got one, replied Karen. Peter had Peter had her and came with his tray of champagne. Yo, kusoma si rahisi. Oh, kusoma ni rahisi. I want this to be something that I'm used to doing. Kusoma ni rahisi. Yeah. Karen grabbed one of the glasses and took a long sip. Tom watched her anxiously. Darling, he said, don't you think that... But whatever, Tom thought. It was lost in the flood arrival of the second couple of the acting crew, Susie and Stephen. Well, I think Stephen entered the room. The neckline of Susie's dress revealed so much cleavage that it blocked out all other visual stimuli. You didn't want to look, but you couldn't help it. And once you did look, it was difficult to see anything else. I sighed at the thought of my own neckline. My mother kindly describes my build as lithe, but the sad reality is that if I wore my bra backward, I'd probably get more cleavage from my shoulder blades. Well, hello everyone. Pad a woman's voice somewhere north of Susie's chest. I hope we are not late. And Twinnie snapped back into her hostess mode and stepped forward to greet the newcomers. Welcome, Susie. And hello, Stephen. Hello, Eric. I didn't see you at first. As I said, I don't think anyone had, but now that I did focus on them, I could see that Stephen appeared very agitated. His thin frame was quivering, and his eyes kept darting back and forth between Tom and Susie, as if he were watching for some sign, some hint that they were indeed lovers. Eric was also in character. His posture was rigid and tense, and he watched Stephen with worried eyes. As I circulated as I circulated among the actors with my rapidly diminishing supply of food, I heard Stephen say to Eric, I can't take this anymore. I think I'm going crazy, man. I keep picturing them together. Eric patted Stephen's shoulder and said, It's going to be all right, Stephen. Just keep it together, buddy. I promise you that everything is going to be okay. Upon seeing me, Eric turned away. I smiled as I roamed the room, listening in on the various conversations, happy that for once my penchant 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 of eavesdropping was condoned. What is penchant? Patient. Penchant. I don't know that means. I looked around the room at the rest of Antwini's guests to see if they were also enjoying the show. Jackie's clear laugh floated out. She looked like the proverbial kid in the candy store, smiling broadly as she eagerly watched and listened to the actors play their various parts, occasionally engaging one or two of them in a conversation. Daniel also interacted with the actors. Well, actually, with just one actor, he trailed Susie around the room like a bestowed puppy. If nothing else, his behavior seemed to put to rest the rumor that he and Lauren were having an affair. He hadn't stepped more than 5 minutes with her since they arrived. Of course, he hadn't spent more than 5 minutes with me either, and I hadn't imagined our near kiss in the garden earlier. As I surveyed the room, I found Peter staring at me. As soon as we made eye contact, he looked away, as he'd never looked at me before except to criticize. I immediately glanced down at my dress, half expecting to see various spills and stains. It was clean. I ran my tongue over my mouth, wondering if something large and green was stuck there. Again, nothing. I was reminding myself that Peter could find fault with me even on my best days when an elderly man entered the room. The newcomer was tall with a mass of white hair, a short trimmed beard, a glass so thick they magnified his brown eyes to almost 3 times their actual size. He hesitated a moment, as if uncertain where he could go before Aunt Winnie spotted him. Randy, she cried excitedly. She rushed over and enveloped him in a huge hug. Randy, I looked over at Peter for an explanation, but as he seemed to be looking to me for one, I took the newcomer to be Aunt Winnie's surprise guest. Knowing her, he could be anyone from a voodoo doctor hired to perform a good luck dance for the new year to her fiance. Peter and I huh? Simulatan hiyo wadi imekataa kutoka kwa mdomo. Simultaneously. I don't know what that word is. It's so long. I cannot read it. Let me not make you laugh. The word is simultaneously. Where? Simultaneously. And then one thing I've noticed, when I write a word down, it's easier for me to also read it. Because the time that I'm finding difficulty in reading the word on the book, so when I'm writing the word down, I also find myself having an ease reading the word. Do I make sense? Simultaneously. The word is simultaneously, but I will not pronounce it in the first place. Simultaneously. Crossed the room to where they stood. Aunt Winnie glowed as she introduced us to Randy Whitaker. Apparently, he was not a voodoo doctor. However, by the way Aunt Winnie was gazing at him, he might one day be her husband. Randy Owens, the best bookstore in town, she said. That's where I met him. Well, to be perfectly accurate, said Randy, we met in my back office after you burst in demanding to know why I was Auntie Austin. But Aunt Winnie turned to me, her face alight with indignation. What are those? What is indignation? Oh, it is indignation. 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 Her face alight with indignation. Not one of her books was on the shelves. Can you believe it? Not one. Shocking oversight. And as I told you, he said with a fond smile, we had sold out and the shipment was on its way from the warehouse. Aunt Winnie tossed her head. I still say it's a shocking oversight. It's a good thing you have gotten a charm on your side, Randy. Randy laughed and adjusted his glasses. I think I could say the same for you, Winfred. Now enough of Austin. Have I missed anything? He surveyed the room. You can never have enough of Austin, Aunt Winnie retorted. But no, you haven't missed much. As you can see, Gerald is here. Let's not have any fireworks, shall we? Winfred, what do you take for me? Randy Randy replied in indignantly. Randy replied indignantly. Hizi maindigindigi ziko mingi kwa hii kitabu. Sasa hii ni indignantly. What is that? For a man who finds Gerald Ramsey as obnoxious as I do, she replied briskly. Turning to Peter and me, she said by way of explanation, in addition to wanting to buy the inn, Gerald is in the midst of putting together a real estate deal for one of those large bookstore chains, you know, the kind that also sells coffee and t-shirts. Randy was looking into selling his business, but with news of this deal, no one wants to buy it anymore. Turning back to Randy, she linked her arm around his and said, now, I already filled you in on the performance. All you have to do is watch and listen. I'll introduce you to the actors. They walked away, leaving Peter and me alone. We stared blankly at each other. Well, I said. Well, he echoed. Unless we are snipping at each other, it seemed we had nothing to say. I guess I'd better circulate this. I'd circulate with this, I said finally, with a nod to my tray, and I should get back to the bar. He turned and walked hastily away. I moved towards where Lauren and Gerald were standing. Although they stood close, they neither spoke nor even looked at each other. Gerald helped himself to several crab cakes, cheese puffs, and scallop and bacon spears from the tray, stacking them up in a absurd little pyramid on his cocktail napkin. Lauren eyed everything hungrily but politely refused. Lynette was standing by herself, sipping champagne and watching the show unfold with a smile. A distant smile. I walked over to her. Something to eat? She hesitated. I really shouldn't. I'm trying to lose weight. Oh, but you can't diet on New Year's Eve. That's what tomorrow is for. Lots of healthy resolution and fresh beginnings. Besides, Antwini is a wonderful cook. Lynette considered the Lynette considered the tray again. Well, I guess you're right. I suppose it is silly to start a diet regimen today. She chose a crab cake and deli- delicately popped it between her crimson stained lips. You know, she continued, when I was younger, I never had to worry about my weight. I was always the same size, but over the last couple of years, it's gotten harder and harder to keep up the extra pounds off. I guess that's part of getting old. She reached for a cheese puff. Oh, I don't know about that, I responded. I think it's hard for everyone at any age. She ate another cheese puff and nodded towards where Jackie stood talking to Lauren and Gerald. Jackie doesn't seem to have any trouble, she said, with a trace of envy in her voice. She's the same size as she was when we were in school. I remembered Antoni's observation that Jackie kept in shape by exercising. Lynette, however, attributed it to a different reason. With a faint sniff, she said, "Of course, given what her circumstances have been, I suppose it's not that surprising. After all, it's hard to overindulge when you are barely able to make ends meet." The spitefulness of the remark took me by surprise, and I struggled to keep my face neutral. Dear God, why didn't she just stand on the nearest chair and shout out to the room? If it weren't for me, Jackie Turner would be living in a van down by the river. Lynette kept talking. Oh my God. Although it's hard to believe now, we used to look so much alike that people often mistook us for sisters. Where did you two go to school? I asked, hoping to change the subject. Ridicule, Redilf. Jackie and I took drama together. We had this silly plan that after graduation we were going to move to Hollywood, where of course we'd instantly be discovered. What happened? Well, I guess Marty, my late husband, happened. He was very good looking back then, and of course his family was rich as cro- croissants. Croissants. It it made for a hard combination to resist. He was quite the ladies' man. She took her head at the memory. Actually, I think Jackie even dated him a few times. But once he and I met, well, that was that. It was a wha- whirlwind. 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 Nika niko na shida ya L na R. Utadhani naongea a local language na hata I don't. Hakuna any mother tongue that I speak, but niko na shida ya L na R. R. Kitu yote iko na L na R zikifuatana, nakuwa choked. I cannot read it anymore. Whirlwind. Whirlwind. Ooh. Whirlwind. Romance. He proposed only 3 weeks after our first date. Yo. I remember Jackie was so upset because that ruined our plans. She paused to eat another crab cake. I doubt I would have gotten very far. Anyway, my only talent was an ability to cry on demand. Jackie, on the other hand, has always had a real talent for mimicry. More of a gift, really, than a talent. She was amazing. Lynette's voice held a tinge of regret. She immediately shook it away. But, as I said, it was a silly idea. Neither of us had what you'd call the staff of legends. What did Jackie end up doing? I shifted the tray. Oh, she ended up taking a teaching job somewhere in Ohio. And Marty and I moved to Kentucky. Greenwich, she added after a brief pause. She was quiet for a moment, seemingly lost in her memories. It's funny how things turned out, she said slowly, more to herself than to me. I thought I would have such a perfect life with Marty. He came from a wonderful family. He was rich and handsome, but he was also the biggest lush I ever had the misfortune to meet. Oh, I said, taken aback at this blunt admission. I'm sorry, that must have been very hard. It was. But I wasn't the first woman to marry an alcoholic. At least we had ample money, so I never had to worry about losing the house. And of course, I had my charity work to keep me busy. Thankfully, we weren't able to have children. At the time, it was quite distressing, but in the hindsight, I think it was a blessing. I was thankful that Lynette, cons- constant nibbling, had emptied my tray because it gave me a reason to excuse myself from the conversation. I had no idea what to say to her. Not that it mattered. She struck me as the sort of person who talked a great deal but seldom required a response. She'd had difficult she'd had a difficult marriage, but she didn't invite much sympathy. Maybe it was her lack of loyalty to people. By her own admission, she had tossed Jackie aside when they were younger, and from what she had told me about her husband, it sounded like once she realized he had a problem, she had pushed him aside too. As I made my way across the room, I caught Peter staring at me again, and I had a sudden immature urge to stick my tongue out at him. I restrained myself and continued to the kitchen. On my way, I saw Lauren. She stood with back to the her back to me, talking on her cell phone. As I neared, I heard her say, "Okay, I'd better go. Happy New Year. I love you, baby." With a soft click, she shut the phone and dropped it into her little purse. Seeing me, she pasted a bright smile on her face. "The party is going wonderfully, don't you think? So far, so good," I agreed. With a nod at my empty tray, she said, "Well, don't let me keep you." She hurried back to where Gerald stood. Of the many possibilities Lauren's conversation did suggest, I was secretly pleased that an affair with Daniel was not one of them. I continued on to the kitchen. My mood vastly improved. After refilling the tray, I headed back to the dining room. As I passed the rear door that led to the garden, it opened and Joan and Polly in from the cold. Walked in from the cold. My face must have shown my surprise because Joan quickly said, "Oh, hello, Elizabeth. My, it's really coming down out there. It's like a winter wonderland." Polly and I just couldn't resist. There's something about snow that brings out the kid in everyone, I guess. As, as directed, I looked out the back window. The snow was indeed coming down heavily, transforming the backyard into a sea of white. I must be getting old, I thought, for unlike Joan and Polly, I had absolutely no desire to go and stand in it. I was quite happy to enjoy the view from the comfort of the heated indoors. Joan hurried back to Henry while Polly stayed with me. Although she said nothing, Aunt Winnie laughed loudly at something and Polly said, "Your aunt seems like a lot of fun." I looked over to where Aunt Winnie stood talking to Gerald and Lauren. "She is," I agreed with a smile. Polly continued, "Sorry about my father's behavior earlier. He can be overbearing at times." That was one way of describing that man. I could think of several other terms, which, while more fitting, wouldn't be appropriate to share with his daughter. I snuck a glance at Polly. She was still staring at her father, her face and her face an unreadable mask. Quite suddenly, an expression of pure hatred crossed her face. As quickly as it had come, it was gone, and the controlled mask was firmly back in place. It happened so fast that I wondered if I had imagined that look. I felt for her. It must be hard to go through life with a father as obnoxious as Gerald Ramsey. I wondered if she often found herself apologizing for his rude behavior. I wouldn't worry about it, I said finally, and Twinnie didn't seem upset. I am glad. She seems like a nice lady. I hope she never sells this place. That surprised me. Oh, I don't think you have to worry about her selling anytime soon. She loves it too much. I hope so, but you don't know my father. When he wants something, he usually gets it. In a low voice, she added, just tell your aunt to be careful. Before I could ask what she meant by that, Daniel walked up. Well, here you are. Why are you two hiding in the corner? Polly smiled at him from across the room. Gerald backed out. Polly, come here. Her smile instantly died and her cheeks grew red, but whether from shame or anger I couldn't tell. Excuse me, she said quietly and slowly walked to where Gerald stood. Daniel watched her go, his lips pressed together in a thin, angry line. That poor kid, he said finally. He's a real brat. Brat. He absent he absent-mindedly he absent-mindedly ate a cheese puff and surveyed the room. In one corner, Lynette stood talking to Jackie. Daniel observed them quietly. With a nod to Lynette, he said, "So, I take it that's the fine lady who single-handedly saved Miss Turner from a life of abject poverty." I glanced at him in some surprise and he shrugged. She made it pretty clear. I shook my head. All the more sorry for Jackie. Yes, that's Lynette. I guess they are old school friends. Apparently, when they were younger, they were going to go off to Hollywood together. Daniel ate another cheese puff. Really? He eyed them critically and then pronounced, well, they look like they once had the gums for it. What? I sputtered with a laugh. Their legs, being a connoisseur, I found that there were really only two kinds of women's legs. Their ankle either curve in nicely from the calves or they don't. With the latter, you get that tree trunk appearance. I knew the look he meant. That was that was a perfect description of my legs. A guy a guy I once dated had cruelly referred to them as knuckles. I hoped he was dead now. I shifted my weight uncomfortably and prayed he wouldn't look down. He did turn to me, but thankfully he didn't look at my legs. Leaning in closer, he stared into my eyes and my heart beat a little faster. You look quite lovely tonight, Elizabeth, he said. Before I could respond, Susie walked by, and in the same time it takes to say fickle, his attention had transferred from me to her. Save me a dance, he said, before popping another cheese puff in his mouth and trailing after Susie. I had a sudden urge to hurl the heavy tray at his beautiful English head. Making my rounds once again, I saw Tony raise his eyebrows at Susie. She, in turn, checked to see that Stephen was looking the other way before nodding her head in affirmation. Glancing around to see if anyone else had noticed this exchange, I saw Karen, her face contoured with rage, glaring at Susie. When Karen noticed me watching her, she turned on her heel and marched towards the bar. where she accepted a drink from Peter and quickly downed it. The grandfather clock in the front hall chimed. It was 8:45 and time to sit everyone for dinner. And Twinnie smoothly showed the guests to their assigned seats, while Peter and I went to the kitchen to load the plates. So, said Peter, as he tossed the baby arugula with the champagne vinaigrette. Do you have a guess as to who's going to be murdered? My money is on Susie, I replied, although if she gets shot in the chest, she's in a grave danger of deflating. Peter laughed and meowed at me. I studiously ignored him. Aunt Winnie joined us a minute later, and the three of us served the first course of salad with warm pears and walnuts, followed by the beef fillets and go- gorgonzola sauce. Yo. Hiyo sauce waliserve, sijui ni gorgonzola, gorgonzele, grogo whatever, grogo something. Ati sauce inaitwa nini? Wapi? Wacha tuisome. Imenipotea. Gorgonzola. And Twinnie had seated at least one of the actors at each table. Susie and Stephen sat with Joan. Henry, Daniel, and Polly, Tom, and Karen sat with Aunt Winnie. Randy and Peter, Aunt Winnie, Randy and Peter. I was seated at a table with Lauren and Gerald, Lynette, Jackie, and Eric. The purpose of this arrangement, of course, was for the guests to find out more about the murder. Unfortunately, Henry seemed to have missed this and monopolized the conversation at his table with rapturous tales of Miss Christelle Dubois' latest addition to her estate, an enormous outdoor fireplace. I heard Daniel politely ask if Miss Dubois was fond of s'mores. Beside him, Joan's face was awash with embarrassment, and her none too subtle hints that he dropped the matter went unheeded. At our table, Eric talked freely and loudly about his friendship with Stephen, dropping hints and marking innudious about fitting just innudious. 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 About fitting justice of infidelity in a marriage. Peering out at him from underneath her hat, Jackie peppered, peppered Eric with questions. As for Lynette, she occasionally added to the conversation, but it was hard to get an edge in with Jackie. Gerald paid more attention to his food than to us, and Lauren was so quiet she could pass for a mute. I tried several different conversation openers with her, but without much success. Books didn't interest her. She hadn't seen any of the movies I had seen. Even my questions about politics was answered by Gerald, who flatly told me she votes Republican, like me. Finally, I said to her, I really love your dress. Bingo, she lit up. Why? Thank you, she said. When I saw it, I just fell in love with it. And you know what they say, pink is the new black. There was a short pause during which she realized that I was wearing a black dress. Well, I mean, black is very nice too. I decided that perhaps it wasn't necessary for me to engage Lauren in a conversation after all. Soon, everyone had finished dinner. Coffee and dessert were served. In the interest of saving time, we had agreed that this course would not be served seated. Instead, we set up the coffee cake and plates on a side table for those who were interested. Aunt Winnie increased the volume of the music which she had lowered for dinner and lost no time in grabbing Randy and heading for the dance floor. The two of them now dipped and twirled in perfect time with each other. Daniel and Polly were also dancing, Dudley announcing that he had no intention of dancing. Gerald watched them with a grim expression from our table. No doubt he considered the activity to be a damned tedious waste of an evening. It wasn't only the volume of the music that had increased. The tension among the actors was now palpable. Karen appeared quite drunk. Stephen was so upset he had developed a stutter. Tom was pretending that everything was fine, but whenever anyone spoke to him, he had trouble making eye contact. Eric stood very quietly by the bar, watching Stephen. Only Susie seemed untouched by the tension. She laughed freely and flirted with all the men. But one thing was clear, something was about to happen. And it did. Without warning, the room was pitched into inky blackness. An excited gasp went up from the guests. The murder was about to happen. Around me, several voices began talking at once. Oh, it's starting. Wow, that's my foot. I can't see a thing. This is this is asinine. The last comment was uttered by Gerald, of course. I listened for any subtle clues, but there was nothing subtle about what happened next. I saw a flash of green and had a pop. It was followed by a piercing scream. Someone fell heavily, sending dishes and glasses smashing to the ground in the process. I was just thinking that Aunt Winnie was going to be upset if her good china was broken, all for the sake of the show, when I was roughly pushed aside and I heard a voice yell out, "For God's sake, get the lights!" An icy finger slid down my spine. The panic I sensed around me seemed too real to be part of the show. I blindly stumbled for the door when the light came back on. Blinking at the abrupt brilliance, I tried to get my bearings. The first face I saw was Eric's. That's when I knew that something was terribly wrong. His complexion was ashed, and his eyes were wide with fear. No matter how good an actor he was, I could tell the horror on his face was real. I turned my head and saw why, as Frank Sinatra's rendition of "It Had to Be You" blared around me. I stared down at the silly body of Gerald Ramsey. He gazed interestedly back. And that's it for chapter 5. Deep down, I feel like just a little I'm getting better at reading. Just a little. Like, slowly by slowly, I'm getting better at reading. But when it comes to hard words that have L and R, it's not easy. It's not easy. But I feel like I'm getting better at my reading. Before we are done with this book and then we start another book, my God, tutakuwa tushakuwa pro. Anyway, and that's it for our reading series. Naweza taka kupata mtu anaenjoy mimi nikisoma hizi vitabu na wasomea. Sasa una read na mimi book by book. Yo. But that's it. So I will catch you later on my update videos. So Turu, and thanks for being here.